Okay, now that we have taken care of pre-flighting and packaging, if we go back to Canvas, we can see that the next step are to export a copy of our project to an Idml. If you haven't already done that, and if you're following along and you're using InDesign CC, you have already done that. If you're using an older version of InDesign, either CS4, 5, 5.5, and maybe 6, I think midway through 6 they added that feature, you may have to go back and choose to export. However, with that being said, if you're using an older version, CS4 has got to be at least, I want to say, 9 years old at this point, and so you should really consider using the computers on campus to do your coursework. You may hit things that I'm going to demo that don't look the same anymore, although I will say that 99% of the updates in InDesign over the past 10 years, they've been mostly digital based. You can make apps, you can make interactive PDFs, you can make videos and different things like that. You can't make videos, you can add videos to interactive PDFs and things like that. So all the stuff we do in our class, it really shouldn't affect too much, but the placement and the look of things might be slightly different in my new videos here. Okay, so the next couple things we're going to do, we're going to export, and so we're going to export to a series of Jpeg files, and I'm going to show you how to do the PNGs, and I would like you to choose. You can either include PNG or Jpeg files. I tend to like the PNGs better. I just feel like they work better for most images. And then I will show you how to export to a print PDF and to add all printers marks to that. The adding of all printers marks, it actually goes along with your printed portion as well, but we'll cover the printing in another video. And so let's go ahead, let's open our InDesign project back up. We've already saved it, we pre-flighted it, we packaged it, and now to finish up the project we need to export a copy, file export, to 3 different file formats. The first being the Idml, InDesign Markup Language file. I'm not going to do that because in the Creative Cloud we've already created one, but if you don't have one, go ahead and create one. All you have to do is choose that and hit save, and it will create for you. Then we are asked to either create JPEG or PNG files, and I'll do both. And the only thing I really want to point out is that you need to make sure that these exports go into your package folder. And so I just exported current1b folder, and so I'm going to navigate to that and make sure that it goes in there. Now earlier in the lecture I said that web file formats, they can't handle multiple pages, and right now if I was to export this document, it has 8 pages in it. And so if I was to export to a JPEG or a PNG file, I wouldn't get one document that has 8 pages. I would get 8 documents that all have 1 page. And so what I would like you to do is to be proactive and make a new folder for the JPEGs before we export to a JPEG. And I'll go ahead and make one for the PNGs while I'm at it because I am, whoops, make sure you don't put it inside the other one. I don't know if I can edit that from here, so I'll just make a new one. And then eventually I'll delete that. And then I'll make a folder for the PNGs, and so when I export them, although I'm going to have 8 of them, they'll be kind of nice and organized because they'll be inside that folder. And so it's important what I name the file because it's going to number the files, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I actually think the first one might not have any number on it. So before I export to the JPEG, I'm going to change the file name and just put an underscore, and so it's current1 is my project, but then there's an underscore and then it will have the file name. And so it won't look weird if it's current1 and then current 12, 13, 14 because of that number 1 I have in the title. Go ahead and hit save. For our class, you don't have to change anything in this dialog box unless you want to experiment with it. For right now, just accept the default terms and hit export. I'm not going to show you what happened, but I am going to export to PNGs and then I'll show you. And so if we go back to our packaged folder, ignore that I have that extra PNG file folder. I'll delete that. I'm going to direct it to go into the PNG folder that I made and change the file format to be a PNG. Again, I'm going to leave the underscore on the title so that I get a gap in the file name before the numbers start, and then hit save. Again, you can use the default settings for now. We'll talk about later in the semester what they mean and how to increase the quality of your image by changing them. If I minimize and I go back to my desktop and I find my package folder, I should find that I now have a JPEGs folder and a PNG folder. And inside, let's delete that guy while we're at it. Inside, I do have all the pages, all 8 pages, and you can see that they did get numbered. It's current. You can even renumber this so that there's a 1. It would bother me if there wasn't. So its current one is the project, and then it's page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. And if we go into the PNGs, it should be very similar, but now these are PNG files. And I'm also going to add a little number 1 there. If we go back to InDesign, we need to export to one more file format, File Export. And this time, we're going to make sure that the files go into our package folder again. But now, I can get rid of that underscore, and I'm going to change it to be an Adobe PDF, not interactive, but a print one. And it's important that you select the right option because I want you to add all printer's marks to your project. And one, if you don't choose print PDF, you will not have the option to add printer's marks. But more importantly, if you choose interactive, the file size is going to be smaller. It's going to try to convert your images to lower resolution and use a different color mode because it's going to try to prep your project for a web output. If you choose the Adobe PDF for print, it's going to uphold the higher standards that you need for printing. You need higher resolutions and things like that. This one doesn't have to go in its own folder because it's only going to be one file. When you hit save, you will get an export Adobe PDF dialog box, and there's lots of stuff that you can play around with and you can adjust. For right now, I just want you to go to the Marks and Bleeds tab, and I would like you to include all printer's marks, and I would like you to use document bleed settings. Again, it doesn't look like anything happened, but if we go to that package folder, I now have a PDF, and that PDF has all printer's marks like we talked about in the lecture. It has trim marks and bleed marks, it has color bars, it has registration marks, and I'll take a minute to show you what those are. And so if I zoom in here in the top left-hand corner, there are two sets of hash marks in the corner of your pages. The inside ones indicate your trim marks. I'm going to trim my project, and if I trim on those lines, my project will be the size that I want it to be. And this project, I believe, is 5 by 7 inches. And so if I was to use these as guides to trim vertical and horizontally on all 4 sides of the project, I would end up with a 5 by 7 inch booklet. The hash marks on the outside are your bleed marks, and so when we print more than we need. So in theory, I'm gonna cut on this red line that's being illustrated here. When I cut on that line, sometimes I might cut a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, and I'll be off, and it won't be perfect. And if I just stop printing at the edge of the page where that red line is, can you see how the hash marks line up with it? If I happen to cut a little bit to the left, and I did not print more than I needed, a bright white strip of paper would show through. And so I print more. I print 1/8 of an inch, 0.125 inches beyond the page. The outside hash marks are the bleed marks, and they indicate where your bleed should be pulled out to. And I use this as a good example because I technically have the right bleed, right? My image goes all the way out to the bleed mark. But can you see how it doesn't make any sense? This image of the birds here, if I was to trim out here for some reason, because I'm just way off when I'm trimming, I would get a bright beige strip of image showing through on the edge of the book. And so my bleed is actually not used correctly. Whatever touches this red line here in the example, it should be pulled all the way past it, all the way to the bleed line. And so this photograph should actually go all the way to that blue line in our example. And this is a little confusing because the bleed line in InDesign is actually red, and so these are switched in InDesign. I have this open in Acrobat. There are color bars that will show up on your page, and they don't have to be in the place that I'm showing you now. Different software applications, when you export, will have the color bars in different places. But the goal of those is to test the color that you're printing. And so in printing, we never look at a page and say, that printed right and it's perfect. What we do is we measure the color that we're putting on the page, the density of the color, and then we say we're applying the right amount of density, so we must be printing the right color. And all of these are color bars. These are not grayscale color bars. I guess technically they're trying to allow you to test grayscale, but they're not made out of black. It's not just black and then lighter shades of black. All of those are made out of a combination of cyan, magenta, yellow, black, and any spot colors. And so it's like a rich black. It's called registration black. And so you're measuring all the colors combined, but it just looks like when you mix them together that it's gray. These little circles with the plus signs in them are registration marks, and they are used when you are printing with printing plates. And so when you print with printing plates, you create color separations. You divide the channels of color, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and you print them separately. So you print the cyan, then you print the magenta, then you print the yellow, or whatever order you're printing in. And once you apply the first color to the paper, you have to make sure the second color lands exactly on top of it. And so what we do is we don't look at the picture and say it looks right. We look at those little plus signs, those registration marks, and we make sure that they overlap perfectly. And so they're on all sides of the project so that we can check each one of them to make sure that the next color is lining up perfectly to the color before it. And then when we apply the third color and the fourth color, and in this case there's 5 colors in this project, when we apply the 5th color, they should align up perfectly one on top of another. And they also, just like those grayscale color bars at the top of the screen, they look like they're black, but they're not black. They are 100% of every color that you're printing. It's 100% of cyan, magenta, yellow, black, in our case also that creamy beige color because we're printing that as a spot color. If you only printed it in black, then it would only show up on the black color separation. So on your cyan, your magenta, and your yellow color separation, you wouldn't have anything to use for registration. Last but not least, at the very bottom of your page, there will be page information. And so it will include things like your document and the page number. So this is my document title, and then it's page 1 that I'm seeing. If I was to flip to page 2, you scroll down. Oh, I only exported page 1. Oh, we'll have to go back and I'll double check that. If you have more than one page and you scroll to page 2, then you would have a second page. In the bottom right hand corner, it will timestamp it so that you know what time you made it. If you have 4 or 5 different versions of a file, if you have a timestamp on it, you can know what the most recent is. And then if you were to create color separations, right here in this empty area next to the file name and the page number, it would tell you this is the process cyan plate, this is the process magenta plate, this is the yellow plate, this is the black printing plate. And that's incredibly helpful because it allows you to quickly know the difference. Okay, before I wrap up this video, I'm going to go back to InDesign because I guess I only exported the first page. So let's go back and let's export one more time. File, export. We're going to export to a print PDF, and I'm going to hit save, and I'll say to replace. And then right here where it says range, I wasn't paying attention. You need to do all pages so that you get all of the pages in the document. While I'm zoomed in here, you can choose to export as pages or spreads. I'm going to do spreads just so you can see what it looks like, but neither is required for the project. You can choose whichever one or leave the default. And so now that I'm doing all the pages and I export, if we go to our package folder, we have a multi-page document now. And this is the front cover, so it's by itself, but when I go to the next page, I now have what's called a spread. And a spread is when a left and a right-hand side of a book are next to each other. It's called a spread. The page spreads from one side to the other. And you can see that page 2 is next to page 3, and 4 is next to page 5. This is in reader's perspective. These are reader spreads. For printing, the page numbers are all going to be out of whack the way that you print them, and we'll figure that out in the next video when we print our booklet.